and welcome fans of flip clocks. Today we're going to restore this rather filthy Panasonic flip clock and get it looking as good as we can. This is a clock we started to call the Criminal Minds flip clock because it appeared on the show Criminal Minds. So as with any flip clock, first thing you want to do is get a good look at it and kind of figure out, well, what are we going to do to take it down? And this clock happens to be the Panasonic RC-1103, the Criminal Minds flip clock. So you got to get the knobs off first. That's just the way it is. And we're not going to have any luck with our knobs today. There we go. No. So we got to use our old standby trick is we need a blade. You don't want something really rigid. So believe it or not, a butter knife happens to be the best thing I've found. And you want something to protect your case there. And I'm going to pry up. I'm using my finger on the other side as a counter pressure there. And no luck. So this one, sometimes if I pull that off first, it works. Sometimes if that knob there, that's the alarm set. Sometimes if I pull that off first, but we're just going to have to use force here again. But we're just have to go off camera because I work and work. Now finally the top one did come off with just brute force. And see, there's a little piece of metal, that's a metal tab in there that's going to slide in that slot that of the selector. And you can see a lot of grime in there. That's what had us stuck, probably. So, now the volume, same thing. We're going to use a blade, and we're going to try to just get that off. And there we go. So we got lucky with that one. And there's a lot of filth in there. And this is just a plastic with a metal band around it. That's how it's secured. Okay, so this is very frustrating. I worked really long and hard on that, and finally I got it off. Now I had to use a trick that I've never used before, and probably a little bit risky. See, that's a metal band around there. So anyway, I put the clock back together because I had to take the clock apart to do it, but I just put the clock back together to show you. Here's a screw, and you can see it's got a washer on it. The older clocks had used a lot of washers, and the newer clocks don't. Anyway, you just take all the screws out that you find. And this here, you want to pry this up from the top, and then pull it up at an angle, and that's going to come right off. So here's our components. Now, if you look there where that knob was, the hardest knob I've ever had to get off. What I had to do was use a hairdryer and get that plastic warmed up. And I'm going to tell you, you got to be careful with a hairdryer. It is hot enough to ruin these clocks. And then I put the blade in here, and I used pressure up against a metal piece of the components there, and I was able to pry that out. So that was difficult. Now, you look at this, and the first thing that's got to come out is going to have to be this speaker. And there are metal tabs there that I pried in just then, and then I should be able to lift that, slide that kind of straight up and out, and it's in good shape. So some of these older clocks, they were pretty tight. They didn't get a lot of dust in them compared to some of the newer ones. So we're just going to have to break that free, just pull it straight back, and it comes out. And same thing here, straight back, and out it comes. Now we've got a case we can try to work on cleaning, because it sorely needs it. Now, this mechanism here, you can see the light, it is on, but the motor is not working. So I'm pretty sure we can get that fixed. Now the light, this is a brand new light. It came from another clock, and it has the resistor in place and everything, and you can clearly see it's going to work better and look better. So we'll replace this old thing here. We'll solder it into the board later. But we want to turn our attention to the motor. And I've done this before, showed you guys the best way to clean these motors, but I think it bears repeating. Anyway, here's a nice little pocket monkey wrench. It's like a cut down monkey wrench. I got it off of Amazon one time, and I'll tell you, this thing is real handy when working on these clocks. But today I've got a socket that's going to fit that really nicely. It's a 5.5 millimeter socket, and that's going to fit that nicely, so it'll make our job a little easier for disassembly and reassembly. So just carefully take your nuts off, and these are small little nuts, and you got to find a place to put them. And there's a little, this happens to have a little lock washer, so really you want to have a cup or something to put those in because once you lose them, you're in trouble. Now that shroud comes off, and you want to put that somewhere so you don't bend it. It's very fragile. Let's just say it bends easy. Okay, you take this off so that we can get to that motor and get this thing clean. You see, it's just not spinning at all. It's just gunked up in there really bad. So we get our alcohol, and the highest percentage you can get is what you want. Walmart has like I think a 91% that's really good. And you put that part, just that part, don't get the whole thing in there, just the part that spins. Get that in there, and you just want to spin that around in there. And I don't show the whole amount of time I did it. I probably did it about a minute. And you can see it's moving a lot more freely now. Oh yeah, a lot better. Then you want to shake all the excess out before you fire it up, but just kind of work all that excess out, shake it out. And I'm going to plug it in, and I don't know if you could see that, but it came right on. It came on right away. It didn't lag or anything, so this thing's going to work. So these things don't need oil. You don't want to use WD-40. That's the worst thing. It'll actually gunk up again in about a couple, 3 months to a year, and you have to do this again. So I don't even put any oil on them. Sometimes I'll put a drop of oil, but really you don't need it. I love that thing. It looks so cool. Anyway, so this happened to fall off. It's the antenna. It's the AM antenna. I think it's called a ferrite antenna. It's anyway, that clamp there, that ring there broke, and so we're going to have a replacement. I got to be careful. See all those little wires there. Now I can see this tuner here. It had slipped off the circuit board, and I must have done that when I was trying to get the knobs off. So we're going to take care of business here with a zip tie. We're going to place this in that hole, come around the top, and bring it through, and I think that's going to hold it in as good as the original. So I'm just going to work it through. I don't know how often someone else would run into that problem, but there's a solution to it if you ever get something like that. It's just got to be, it can't be metal, and it's just got to keep it, we'll trim it back so that it doesn't get in the way of reassembly. That's going to work great. Okay, so turning our attention to the case, this faceplate here, sometimes on these clocks, if you look in here and if you see black, like tarry stuff, they've glued it, and you really don't want to mess with it. You're going to have to rinse it out from the inside, but I don't see any of that. And sometimes they'll burn that plastic too to hold it in place, but we're going to be able to take that faceplate off. And what I'm doing is I'm pushing those tabs in towards each other, kind of squeezing them. And you got to be careful. If you work them out evenly, then it'll come out. Sometimes you have to push it back in and then pull straight out, unless you're not concerned about saving the tabs. But now we can clean this up real good. It's not in that bad shape. A little bit of grime in there. A lot of grime there. So this is after reassembly. After we've cleaned everything up, soap and water is the best thing you got going for you. We'll see if the clock works. There. So everything's working now. So we come a long way. We've got this thing cleaned up. It looks like a whole different clock. And there it is, the restored Panasonic RC-1103, what I'm calling the Criminal Minds flip clock. When you get the time, come visit us at flipclockfans.com.